revenge doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. One choice, one word, and an empire can start to crack. For Caitlin Clark, revenge wasn't about clapping back on social media or trading barbs in interviews. Her revenge was far more devastating. She simply said no. No to Geno Auriemma. No to UConn's storied legacy. No to the $1 million offer that came crawling back years later.
Like I said earlier, they actually had odds that, she was like third or fourth in the betting odds to be MVP of the WNBA. That's such a slap in the face to every WNBA player. It's unbelievable, right?
On paper, it looked insane. Who turns down over $1 million for just 8 weeks of basketball? But this wasn't about money. This was about a lifeline thrown by a man who once dismissed her, belittled her, and wrote her off as an afterthought. When Caitlin Clark rejected it, she didn't just walk away from a contract, she delivered the ultimate humiliation. She humbled the man who thought he could never be humbled.
That's the worst part about new fans. They have no perspective. There's no context. So they just say ridiculous nonsense.
This story was never just about basketball. It wasn't about points, assists, or trophies, it was about power. For decades, Geno Auriemma stood as the gatekeeper of women's basketball. He decided who mattered, who got the spotlight, and who faded into obscurity. But Caitlin Clark flipped that script. She didn't need his approval, his program, or his checkbook. She built her empire without him. And when he finally came calling, she shut the door with quiet authority. I don't need you. You need me. Every revenge story starts with a mistake. Geno's wasn't a blown play or a bad timeout, it was arrogance. Before Clark became the face of the sport, before the record-shattering ratings and sold-out arenas, she was just a kid from Iowa with a dream. And like so many others, that dream was UConn. The dynasty. The empire. The home of Taurasi, Moore, Stewart, the mountaintop of women's basketball. For a girl in Iowa, there was nothing bigger. Recruitment time came. The most electrifying talent of her generation should have been a no-brainer. But the call never came. Geno never picked up the phone, never called her parents, barely sent a message through her AAU coach. And it wasn't an oversight, it was a choice. His reasoning? UConn already had Paige Bookers, and he didn't want 2-point guards. On the surface, maybe fine. But then came the insult. Geno suggested that if Clark really wanted UConn, she should have called him. Think about that. The man who built his legacy on spotting generational talent before anyone else dismissed Caitlin Clark, and then blamed a teenager for not chasing him. That wasn't just a miss. It was disrespect. And Clark never forgot it. So she chose Iowa. No dynasty glow, no banners, no mystique. To many, it looked like a consolation prize. But to Clark, it was freedom. And Iowa, she wasn't Paige's shadow. She wasn't Geno's afterthought. She was the recruit, the face of the program. And from the moment she laced up in Iowa City, she rewrote the script. Her logo threes weren't just shots, they were statements. Her sellout arenas weren't just crowds, they were proof. Her record-breaking TV ratings weren't flukes, they were receipts. Every bucket, every highlight, every shattered record screamed the same message: you missed this. But Geno doubled down. Instead of humility, he leaned on arrogance. He brushed her off with sound bites, calling her a kid playing like she was still in the driveway. Instead of acknowledging her as a generational force, he tried to shrink her into something ordinary. But ordinary doesn't sell out Madison Square Garden. Ordinary doesn't pull WNBA ratings past the NBA's Summer League. Ordinary doesn't cost you millions. And that's where the irony cut deepest. Geno closed the door when Caitlin Clark knocked. He thought she'd fade into just another good player. Instead, she built the biggest empire women's basketball has ever seen, without him. And when he finally circled back, contract in hand, Clark didn't rage. She didn't gloat. She just said no. That one word cost him more than any championship loss ever could. And Geno couldn't help himself. Anytime Clark's name came up, he tethered it back to Paige Bookers. If Clark was fearless, so was Paige. If Clark connected with fans, Paige did too. It wasn't random, it was strategy. By tying Clark's rise to his chosen star, Geno kept himself in the frame. He wanted the world to believe her success wasn't unique, that it lived inside the dynasty he built. But backhanded compliments were thin. Fans noticed. Analysts noticed. Other coaches noticed. Clark's brilliance didn't need qualifiers. She was pulling bigger crowds than most professional teams, rewriting the record books, and dragging the sport into mainstream relevance. Meanwhile, Geno clung to his throne, smiling for cameras while dripping with insecurity, the kind that shows when the spotlight is shifting and you can't stop it. Eventually, the mask slipped. The sly digs turned into outright shots. By June 2024, on the Dan Patrick Show, he crossed a line he couldn't walk back. The Hall of Fame coach, the face of a dynasty, didn't just question Caitlin Clark, he went after her fans. And with that, the empire he spent decades building started to crack.
The delusional fan base that follows her disrespected the WNBA players by saying she's going to go in that league and tear it apart. There were actually odds on she's third or fourth in betting odds on being MVP of the WNBA. These people are so disrespectful and so unknowledgeable and so stupid that it gives women's basketball a bad name. Okay, so the kid was set up for failure right from the beginning.
Geno didn't bother with subtlety. He flat out called Clark's supporters delusional. He said they didn't understand the game. And then, almost unbelievably, he accused them of actually hurting women's basketball. Their crime? Daring to believe that Caitlin Clark, as a rookie, could finish near the top of the MVP race. To Geno, that wasn't passion. It was stupidity.
And Diana said it best. This kid's in for a rude awakening.
Think about that for a second. Millions of new eyes had just poured into women's basketball because of Caitlin Clark. Families in her jerseys. Kids camping out just to see her. Casual fans tuning into the WNBA for the very first time. And Geno's response? Not gratitude. Not celebration. Insult. Instead of embracing the wave of fresh energy that she brought, he mocked it. This wasn't analysis. It wasn't a coach breaking down strengths and weaknesses. This was personal, a direct shot at the lifeblood of Clark's rise. The fans. The people who carried women's basketball into the mainstream spotlight. Geno wasn't just dismissing Clark. He was dismissing them. And because he's Geno Auriemma, people listened. That's what made it so damaging, so revealing. By calling her fans clueless, he wasn't just underestimating them. He was underestimating her. He was saying the hype wasn't real, the success wasn't sustainable, and in the end, he would be proven right. But here's the twist, Geno wasn't right. He wasn't even close. Clark didn't clap back on Twitter. She didn't need to. Her answer came on the only stage that mattered, the court. She didn't just play. She erased out. Rookie of the Year. All WNBA first team. And when the MVP votes came in, fourth place. Exactly where her delusional fans had predicted she'd land. The same prediction Geno laughed at turned into reality, and with it, his credibility crumbled. It wasn't just a victory for Clark, it was vindication for her fans. Every parent who brought their kid to see her. Every casual viewer who tuned in. Every new supporter Geno dismissed as clueless. Clark proved they were prophetic. And the beauty? She did it without saying a word. Silent revenge. No rant. No drama. Just results. Night after night, logo threes, dazzling crossovers, highlight reel assists. By the time the awards rolled in, the debate was over. Geno had mocked the movement. Clark had built a legacy. She didn't silence him with words. She silenced him with history. And the poetry is undeniable. Geno had crowned himself the gatekeeper of women's basketball knowledge for decades, the man who decided who mattered and who didn't. Yet here, the fans were right. Clark was right. And Geno was wrong. Every sellout, every broken record, every accolade drove the point deeper. She didn't need him. She never did. The irony? Clark wasn't even trying to prove him wrong. She wasn't chasing his approval. She wasn't thinking about him at all. She was just being Caitlin Clark. And that was enough to expose him, humble him, and remind the world that Geno Auriemma wasn't shaping the narrative anymore. She was. By the end of her rookie year, the question wasn't whether she'd lived up to the hype. It was how completely she'd obliterated every doubt. Geno's insults aged like milk in the sun, bitter, insecure, and embarrassingly wrong. But Geno couldn't let it go. Being wrong wasn't something he could stomach. And by now, it wasn't just about Caitlin's game, it was about what she represented. A shift in power. The undeniable truth that women's basketball no longer revolved around him. And instead of accepting it, he did what he always does, he kept talking. Interview after interview. Podcast after podcast. Her name never far from his lips. A compliment here, a dig there. A pattern so obvious you couldn't miss it. Caitlin Clark wasn't just rewriting record books, she was living rent-free in Geno's head. And when words stopped being enough, he pivoted. If he couldn't control the narrative with his mouth, maybe he could do it with money. That's when the $1 million offer entered the picture. By then, Geno had tried everything. He ignored her as a teenager. He dismissed her rise. He insulted her fans. He tried to reframe her stardom as just another byproduct of UConn's dynasty. None of it worked. Clark kept climbing, and Geno kept fading. Then came a new venture, Unrivaled. A 3-on-3 women's league backed by Breanna Stewart and Nafisa Collier. It had ambition. It had money. And behind the curtain? Geno. What it didn't have was the one thing it needed most, a face.
And there's a lot of investors in this league. One investor, been trying to keep quiet about, his investment in the league ever since his comments that he made about a young rookie. Pretty much, had him in the headlines for about a month and a half. That is Geno Auriemma, dog. I'm here to tell you, he's part owner of this league. It will look like Geno Auriemma could be the reason why Caitlin Clark is definitely not joining the unrivaled 3-on-3 basketball league.
They've tried to do everything they could to make the most of the situation. They tried to make the most of Caitlin Clark not playing by hinting everything and basically making people think that Caitlin Clark was going to play.